So this is the PowerPoint that I put together for my instructional design plan. I decided to do this more for teachers than students so that we could align our accommodations with their IEPs and their Smarter Balance assessments. So my call to action was when we were looking at scores, and I noticed that in these two particular years, the same group of students, in grade 5, students with disabilities, 9% of them were proficient on their Smarter Balance test. But then in grade 6, the same group of students, it was less than 5% were proficient. So even though their scale score rose, this was their scale score in 5th grade, and this was the scale score in 6th grade, there still was a huge drop in the number of students that were proficient according to Smarter Balance. So in order to do this, I instructed my special ed teachers to gather their data in an Excel spreadsheet much like this. This is one that we use for our Component 5. This is the Scholastic Reading Inventory that all of our students have to take, but this is the Smarter Balance information that includes their scale score and their performance level from grade 5. And this is their growth goal as outlined by the state. And then later in the year, you will fill out their spring goal, their performance level, and whether they met their goal. I also want our spec ed teachers to organize the spec ed data, to go through the IEPs and organize the accommodations for each student. And these are just two different ways that I have done this personally as a spec ed teacher in the past. One here is where it's a landscape Word document where all of the accommodations for each student are just listed straight across. Here is one that another spec ed student uses where they actually include some of the information from the IEP, as in their disability, what their strengths, the parent concerns, and then they get into their accommodations. But either one of these is very important for even the regular ed teachers to have, so that should the spec ed teacher not be there or while they're planning, they can just go ahead and see what accommodations need to be given to their spec ed students. And then the snapshots are also helpful because when you're looking at their data in TIDE, you have this one document right in front of you that shows you what their accommodations are in the classroom and for assessments in the classroom, so you can make sure they have the same thing in TIDE. To get into TIDE, you need to log into your IMS account, the Identity Management System, and then click on the DESA Math and ELA tab. Once you've clicked on that tab, you need to go into DESA and click on Smarter ELA and Mathematics, and then click on the TIDE button. Once inside TIDE, you have two choices where you're preparing for testing or administering the test. Right now, we're just preparing for testing, and we need to make sure that our students are prepared. So you're going to click on the Students button. When you're in here, you're going to view your students, and this is where you have to enter information. You can either do it, number 1, by entering the student ID number, or 2, you can enter the student's name. Once you do one of those two things, then you would click Search. Inside, once you've searched that specific student, this is the bar that comes up in TIDE, and these are the possible accommodations that students can have. This is where you need to make sure that these accommodations are listed in TIDE. And in this particular student, we found out that text-to-speech was not there, even though it should be. Once you have identified what students have which accommodations and whether or not they're in TIDE, then you need to contact your educational diagnostician with any questions that you have, or with any way, the list of student names that still need to have accommodations put into TIDE because they don't align as well as they should. Once you're done with this, you can start doing your conference with your students. This is a video that I found on YouTube that helps explain what special education and an IEP is, so you could show this to your students to help make them aware. I've found that as 6th and 7th graders, a lot of these kids don't even know what special education means or what an IEP is for. So this will help introduce this to them so that the special education teacher can help make that student aware of the accommodations and the things that they are able to get so that they can be successful in the classroom. Now you're meeting with the student individually, so we need to review the IAB and the ICA assessment with the students so we can show them how to access their accommodations. They now know what accommodations they're able to get, but they need to know how to use these accommodations within these assessments. IABs and ICAs are written by the Smarter Balance Testing Company. They are meant to align with each other, so they're wonderful practice tests for the students to do before they take Smarter Balance at the end of the year. I created a screencast that goes through all of this for my special education teachers so that they can show the screencast to the students or they can use it to make themselves more aware. And once they look at their IAB and ICA assessment scores, they need to compare those scores to scores that they get in their Achieve 3000 class with reading enrichment. Achieve 3000, they're not able to get any accommodations, but for the IABs and the ICAs, they can get accommodations. So hopefully the IABs and ICAs have higher scores than Achieve 3000 because we want them to know that they need to be using these accommodations all the time to show true success. This is kind of what it looks like inside on the IABs, the ICA, as well as the Smarter Balance. When you go in, they need to check to make sure that they have the correct accommodations on the list. And then to access these accommodations once inside the test, each question and each text has these 3 lines. When you click on it, a drop-down menu comes. And this is where they can highlight, they can mark questions that they want to go back to, but it's also where they can push, they can click to have the question read to them by the computer just by clicking this right here. Some students are able to have the text and some of the questions printed for them. To have everything printed at once, you click on this print button, or you can have just the text printed, and you're going to do that while you're inside the text. You're going to click those 3 buttons and click print the passage. When they're taking the performance task, they can actually have the text read to them. So when they have the text read to them, then they're going to click here for speak passage if they have that accommodation. So now regular education teachers are made aware of the accommodations that should be given to individual special education students, and those special education students have been made aware of the accommodations that they legally can get to help make them more successful in the classroom. And in hopes, by using these accommodations on those practice tests and being able to practice how to use them, they'll be more comfortable with it when it comes time to take Smarter Balance, so that they will use these accommodations there, and hopefully it will improve the percentage of students that are identified as proficient as per their Smarter Balance scores at the end of the year. So that is all. Thanks.